Tyson is down! Tyson is down for the first time in his career!
One thing my father always said was, you got to let your hands go. You can't sit around and wait.
And the title could be slipping away. Can he get up from this one? We never thought we'd see this.
I thought I knocked him out. I guess the referee thought differently. And then I remember I lost the fight.
It is all over. The title has gone from Mike Tyson in a scintillating, dramatic, pulsating and sensational fight.
Childhood dream come true, man. It was just, achieve the ultimate goal, and that was becoming the heavyweight champion of the world.
Welcome to 5 Live Boxing. It's 25 years since James Buster Douglas became the first man to beat Iron Mike Tyson. In the next half hour, we'll hear from both men on what was one of the biggest upsets in sporting history, not just boxing history. Joining me in the studio tonight, our boxing correspondent Mike Costello and Steve Bunce. Guys, this was a JFK moment in boxing, wasn't it? You remember where you were. So where were the two of you?
Mike, you go first.
Well, you remember at the time that this was televised over here in the very early days of Sky Sports. I didn't have Sky Sports. I got a call the next morning from somebody at the gym where I was working at the time to tell me the result. And it was one of those, you're joking, you're joking, you're joking, and how can you go away and prove it? You know, today it would be so much easier. And in some senses, because of when it happened, it was all the more shocking because you just couldn't find that proof visibly for some time to come.
Well, I watched it in a mutual friend of ours' house, and we made a VHS copy of it. And that VHS copy, in the next, say, 6 weeks, but I bet it changed. I'm not exaggerating. I do exaggerate sometimes. I'm not exaggerating that. I bet you that tape in 6 weeks changed hands 100 times because it was like that. People didn't believe it. It's a different time. It's only 25 years, but it may as well have been 150 years ago without cameras there.
And fascinating to watch back at some of the footage from that fight as well, which I did this morning. High quality punching. We'll talk more about the details of what happened in a second, but let's have a bit of background before we do that. Starting with the reigning champion, Mike Tyson. He was the king at the time, Mike, wasn't he? Unbeaten, undisputed heavyweight champion at the age of 23. The biggest boxing phenomenon since Muhammad Ali.
And he carried this frightening, intimidating aura. He was one of the most feared punchers in history. More so at the time, if you read back, and I remember back being around, than Sonny Liston and even those before him. And he would make very good heavyweights during his reign as world champion freeze with fear. They would look, when they were walking to the ring, as though they were walking to the gallows. And some of these had very good records. He remains the youngest heavyweight champion in history at the age of 20. He was 23 by the time he took on Buster Douglas. As I say, it was his 11th world title fight. His overall record was 37 fights, 37 unbeaten. At that stage, he'd had 17 first-round knockouts. Usually, when an opponent was hit, they went over, and it was the end of the fight. At worst, it was the start of the end of the contest. And in his previous outing, he'd beaten a more than decent heavyweight called Carl Williams in 93 seconds. And that just set up this match against Buster Douglas as being just a stepping stone for a contest against Evander Holyfield, for which he'd already signed on June the 18th of the same year. This was February the 11th. They'd already signed to fight Evander Holyfield, and that's why Buster Douglas was quoted at odds of 42-1, and there were very few takers.
Very few takers indeed. In fact, there's only one casino in Vegas that ever claimed it took a bet on it, to be absolutely straight. So very, very few people actually took it. And that's because this was an odd fight. The press didn't all arrive in Tokyo. Different correspondents from around the world went from different papers. One or two were coming back from a cricketing World Cup, which is, I think, why one of the guys covered it from The Guardian. People from a cricket tournament. All sorts of odd people were there, including Tyson and his gang. And not only, as Mike said, they mentioned the Evander Holyfield fight, they did a massive press conference in Beverly Hills to announce the Evander Holyfield fight. This guy, Buster Douglas, was given very little hope. The recent run of guys that had shared the ring with Tyson had been good guys. Leon Spinks went in around, Tony Tubbs went in 4, Holmes in 5, Bruno, who at the time was sharp, in 5, Carl the Truth Williams in 90-odd seconds. Buster Douglas was expected to follow all of them, especially as a couple of years earlier, he'd been in a world title fight, and a world title fight that was winnable, extremely winnable. And he basically quit after 9 or 10 rounds, stopped in the 10th. And at the point of him quitting the fight, the judges had it one one judge had him in front, one judge had the other guy in front, Tony Tucker in front, and one guy had it a draw. Now, throw into that mix the problems he had before he got on the plane. I'm going to read this. Can I just do this little list? I've got to do it. I just love it because I've got the full names of these women. He's got 3 women in his life, Buster Douglas, in the January of that year. Mike Tyson doesn't care where he is. He's between Hollywood and the planet, the moon. He's about to go to Tokyo. And Buster Douglas is having to deal with this, okay? His marriage to Bertha is over. She's run off. She's left him. Okay, the mother of his beloved child, Doris, has just been diagnosed with leukemia, and she's in hospital, in a serious ward in hospital. And I think on the 19th of January, his beloved and devoted mother, the biggest supporter of his career, Lula Pearl, dies. All in the space of 2 weeks of him landing in Tokyo. He shouldn't have even been on the plane, let alone in the ring.
And talking about Douglas as a boxer, in 33 fights, by the time he got to the ring against Tyson, he'd lost 4 times already. And he was actually dismissed around boxing, and in particular by those in the Tyson camp, as a quitter. He was somebody who they said was forced into boxing, railroaded into boxing by his dad, his domineering father, William Douglas, who was a very decent light heavyweight himself, somebody who didn't really have the feel for the sport, somebody who had plenty of talent but didn't have that real animal instinct that they need. And his father used to train him for a long period at the start of his professional career, but they had parted company in the build-up to the fight, another part of the acrimony that was just raining down on him. And he was respected for his boxing ability, but given so little chance. And just to underline who Mike Tyson was at this time and what sort of status he held, not just in boxing, but in the world of sport. We look back at the mid-1980s and the 80s in general as this glorious era of the 4 kings, Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns and Roberto Duran. Even in the middle of this glorious era, when Tyson became heavyweight champion in 1986, he was more well-known than any of those, and he was a bigger attraction than any of those. That's how big Mike Tyson was at this time.
We'll hear part 1 of your interview with Buster Douglas in just a second. So let's go back to this story. Mike Tyson against Buster Douglas, a mismatch in most people's eyes. Mike, you've been speaking to Buster Douglas this week.
Yes, from the gym where he now works back in his hometown of Columbus, Ohio. He'd had one previous attempt at the world title 3 years earlier when he'd been beaten in 10 rounds by another American, Tony Tucker, who incidentally was then beaten by Tyson in his very next fight. And the fight against Tony Tucker was one that many felt Buster Douglas could have won and should have won. And that was part of the reason for the fallout with his father, because his father was convinced that Douglas should have been world heavyweight champion by then. But Buster Douglas told me this week from this gym in Columbus, Ohio, that he was in much better shape mentally, believe it or not, for the fight against Tyson.
I was pretty excited about it. That was my second shot at the title, and I felt more confident going into that fight than I did in the first fight. So I knew that was basically a little weird for me to feel like that in a lot of people's eyes that I had maybe mentioned it to. But I did. I felt good going into it because it was my second time around, and I knew exactly what I was getting into.
And I've been watching the fight again just today, James, and it's remarkable how you take control so soon. And you had these basic elements of making sure that you were accurate with the jab, that you didn't stand in front of Tyson to give himself time to set himself, but you really stuck to the plan right from the first bell.
Yes, correct. One thing my father always said was, you got to let your hands go. You can't sit around and wait, and you seize the opportunity, and that's what I did. I didn't wait to get hit and wait for this dynamic champion to do something. I just went after him and I attacked him and let my hands go.
How much fear did you feel? Because some fighters say that fear actually works for them.
Yeah, no more than a normal fight. It might be a little bit more due to the fact that it was a heavyweight championship, but it's good to have that fear that lets you know that it's about to happen. The whole circus got to be working because it's getting ready to happen. We're getting ready to go to war.
And you yourself were knocked down at the end of the 8th round. How badly hurt were you?
I wasn't really hurt. I was took a moment to reflect in the middle of the fight. That's me. Take a moment to reflect, looking at him and start, reminiscing like the fight wasn't like it was over kind of prematurely. And he reminded me that he was still in the fight. The fight was still going strong. And when I got up, I realized that I had to finish the job and get back on point and let my hands go. Don't start daydreaming, because that instant could have been a disaster for me. But fortunately enough, I was able to withstand it and continue on.
I mean, the punch came almost as the bell was about to sound. Do you think you would have been able to recover had the punch landed in the middle of the round?
Definitely, because I knew he was coming. I seen a new life in him when I looked up over there at him. Excuse me. When I seen life, he was brand new, because he knew it was time for him to do what he usually do, get rid of a guy. So, yeah, I was ready, and I would have been able to not hurt him, because I came back strong in the ninth round and sent him back to the corner buzzing.
Do you think you broke his heart by getting up so quickly and by what you did in the ninth round?
I've seen a lot of things react, the chain reaction. When I got up, he kind of like, woof, here he comes. He's back up again. But again, he was still motivated, because I'm sure of a knockdown. So he was going to come out and continue the war. That's one thing about Mike. He fought throughout the whole fight, because, we were battling, and the shots that I was hitting with in the 9th and the 10th round were the shots I was hitting with early in the fight. I was hitting from the onset, trying to break his spirit, and with power shots, and I was doing that throughout the fight.
And how badly did he hurt you across the fight? Even if the knockdowns, you say you weren't that badly hurt, did he sting you at all during the fight?
No. He hit me with some good shots, but I went through them all. I never was buzzed.
Well, that was part one of our interview with James Buster Douglas. I mean, Steve, listening to that, can you remember what you were thinking 25 years ago? Were you thinking, hang on a second, he's giving this a go, this lad?
Well, from the very first round, and I'm not being an after-timer, from the very first 30 seconds, 40 seconds, he was doing what we knew you could do against Tyson. Only good guys, better guys than Buster Douglas had miserably fouled. And that is standing your ground, hitting him with a jab, trying to back him up and then throwing a right hand, but always keeping your hands up and never running. Don't run and don't freeze. And Buster Douglas didn't do any of those things. He did the big jabs, big right hands. He was prepared to take a shot and land a shot. And too much is made of how bad Tyson was in those early rounds. And Buster Douglas was inspired and motivated. He had something to fight for, and we know now that Tyson had nothing to fight for.
And you know what, Steve? When I rang him about a week ago to set up that interview, we got to talking about the fight, and he was giving me so many great lines. I'm thinking, look, wait till we've actually got the
Hold
tape
your fire,
roll out.
son.
And he said to me at one stage, the problem with too many of Mike Tyson's opponents, and I remind you, this was his 10th defence of the title at this stage. He said too many of his opponents fought Mike Tyson with 1 foot in the ring and 1 foot outside the ring. They were petrified, and they couldn't wait to get away from him. And everything that they did was based on damage limitation.
And let's just talk about the knockdown in the 8th, which you heard him refer to then, and we'll come back to that because it caused a lot of controversy after the fight. Just remind us what happened.
Well, it was right at the end of the round. Indeed, when Douglas got up, the bell rang almost instantly. He was clipped on the ropes on the far side of the ring, as you watch the videotape back these days, clipped by a lovely right uppercut from Mike Tyson, the kind of punch that Tyson had been looking for throughout the fight but couldn't find the rhythm or the timing to land. And it clipped the chin of Buster Douglas, and he took a couple of steps back and then rolled over onto the seat of his trunks. He then looked at the referee. You can see him clearly looking at the referee. The referee, in turn, turns around to look at the timekeeper. And it's worth just explaining here for people who don't follow boxing that when a fighter goes down, the referee instantly looks across at the timekeeper, and the timekeeper takes up the count, and the referee follows the timekeeper's lead. Now, he looked over at the referee. There are some the referee looked over at the timekeeper. Some claim that the timekeeper was already at the count of 4 when the referee began counting at 1. That is supposition, it's conjecture, but anyway, he continued counting all the way to 9. Douglas got up because that was what he was obeying, and that was what he had to get up at. And then as soon as he got up, the bell rang, and he had those 60 seconds precious rest.
Well, Don King had something to say about that, and we will hear more about that in just a second. But the fight was allowed to continue, and 2 rounds later, James Buster Douglas shocked the world.
Yes, so Douglas goes down in the 8th round. He gets up remarkably, and in the 9th round has one of his best rounds of the contest. And we would learn afterwards from the judges' scorecards that at this stage it was very, very close on their cards. One had Douglas in front, another had Tyson in front, and the third judge had it exactly level. In the 10th round, there were clear signs that Tyson was tiring. We've just heard there from Buster Douglas how he feels he broke his heart by getting up from that punch. And Tyson tiring and maybe demoralised too. And at the midway point of the round, Douglas lands the same punch that he took in the 8th round, a lovely right uppercut. Then he follows up with a left hook and then a couple of grazing punches. And then suddenly, unbelievably, Tyson is on the canvas.
Tyson is down! Tyson is down for the first time in his career, and the title could be slipping away. Can he get up from this one? We never thought we'd see this. You may be watching the biggest sensation in heavyweight history. It is all over. The title has gone from Mike Tyson in a scintillating, dramatic, pulsating, and sensational fight in Tokyo.
You know, the childhood dream come true, man. It was just, you know, knowing that I had achieved the ultimate goal, and that was becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. It was an awesome experience and something that I would, will always live with me for the rest of my life.
Was it soured at all by the controversy afterwards, which in some cases has been forgotten?
Yeah, that was the best part of it, hearing my name announced as the heavyweight champion of the world, but shortly thereafter it became a really, really, really bad time because, things we had to go through leading up to the up to the first offense, it was pretty bad. It got to be really bad, and that was unfortunate, but,
because Don King, Mike Tyson's promoter, was making a protest, and at one stage it seemed as though you might be denied the title.
Yeah, that was the thing. It was like, that was unbelievable for them to be at that situation, to come down to something like that. It was just unbelievable.
So they said you were down for too long a count in round 8. What do you think?
Yeah, that's funny because it's a human count. You listen to the referee. What was I supposed to do? Like, excuse me, sir, you're not counting fast enough. He counts like he always counts. I'm trying to stay focused on one thing, is making sure that I'm all right to get up. And then I get up. Then when I get up, I'm still wrong for getting up. It's not my fault. Then when you really compare the two counts, his count was way longer than mine. So, it was just really, really unbelievable. It was a joke.
And then if we look at your first and only defence against Evander Holyfield, James, what was the issue there? Did you have a mindset whereby you'd reached the top of the mountain and there was nothing left because you were beaten quickly by Evander Holyfield and you'd put on 14 pounds?
That a lot of things that really interfered with the preparation and going into that title fight. Like I said before, we had a lot of problems dealing with even to be considered the heavyweight champion. And then once I was granted, so to speak, the heavyweight championship, then it was right into the Holyfield fight, and I really didn't have enough time to prepare. And then during the course of the time with all the trial and stuff, it had a trickle-down effect where, everything and anything, things just mounted, and the outcome was in the first defense, and that was really bad. I really don't like that part of it, but it happens, and I've dealt with it, and now I feel better about it, but, that was a pretty tough time for me.
Well, let's just reflect on what he's just said there, Steve, because clearly the backlash from the fight really affected James Douglas.
Yeah, this is what happened there. Let me just the situation with the count is Octavio Moran, the referee, picks up the count, and Douglas follows him. He gets up. The bell rings. Next round, he takes over Douglas. Tyson's exhausted. Then Tyson gets dropped. And again, it's a longish count because, once again, what Octavio Moran does, and not all referees do this, is he doesn't worry about the timekeeper. What Octavio Moran does is take his own count. And he's doing his own count, and he's picking up. That's what he says. It's slightly different. Needless to say, he only ever worked one other world heavyweight title fight again, and he had done the Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard no mass fight. So he was one of the world's top referees. What happens after the fight? Well, and actually, it doesn't happen after the fight. It happens in the 9th round, in between the 8th and 9th round. Don King, the promoter, and various officials and various people are screaming, and Don King screaming. In the start, before the 9th round even starts, he's screaming at the boss of the WBC, the World Boxing Council, and the boss of the WBA, Gilberto Mendoza Sr. He's screaming at the pair of them in the middle of the 9th round, "You've robbed my fighter! You've robbed my fighter!" He knocked him down. It was over 10 seconds. Stop the fight. Mike's the champion. Stop the fight. And, of course, what happens as we go on and he gets knocked out and Don King comes out of a classic line. He says there were 2 knockdowns tonight, but the second knockdown is obliterated by the first knockdown. And to say he gets his way is an understatement.
Mike, it must have been. I mean, was he close, Don King, to getting the fight overturned?
Well, this argument, this review, this investigation by 2 governing bodies, the World Boxing Association and the World Boxing Council, lasted 3 days. So you can imagine what it was doing to James Buster Douglas and the people around him. The IBF, who were regarded at that stage, the International Boxing Federation, as the lesser of the 3 governing bodies, had already sanctioned James Buster Douglas as their recognised world heavyweight champion. But it took 3 days. And a lot of outrage across the world. I mean, I've got the Daily Mirror's coverage. It's a double-page spread. And they've spoken to a host of former greats, John Conte, Henry Cooper, Alan Minter, Jim Watt, and the likes of those, all of them saying it's a disgrace that this man isn't being recognised as the world heavyweight champion. That was replicated in boxing hotbeds all around the world. And eventually the WBA and the WBC, Jose Suleiman and even Don King realised here that what they were doing to James Buster Douglas was unjust in the extreme. And finally, he got a ticker tape parade when he returned to his home city of Columbus, Ohio, and the local mayor...
who hadn't shown up when he left. He nearly made them miss the plane. The local mayor didn't show up on departure, and they were writing at the time. And in fact, a guy called Tim May, who works for the Columbus Dispatch, actually wrote a piece whilst they were out there saying with Buster Douglas saying, "No problem that the mayor wasn't there when I left. He'll want to be there when I get back." And sure enough, he was. Just one thing here, because this is such a fight. It's a fascinating fight. You could do 2 hours on this. There's a terrible thing happens. This is in the middle of the afternoon. This fight. The fight starts about midday-ish and ends about 1:30 or something.
Suit American TV.
To suit American TV. So late in the evening in Tokyo and very late in the small hours in America, Octavio Moran, the referee I mentioned, he gets pulled out in front of a press conference because the press can't believe their luck. Tyson's been knocked out and the 2 main sanctioning bodies have refused to sanction the winner. It's the best. I mean, it's one of the greatest sports stories ever. You can tell from my excitement. So they pull the referee out and he walks out like a puppet. And he walks out and sits down, and his entire comment is, "I don't know why I start my count too late. He was down longer than 10 seconds. Don King jumps in, and Octavio Moran exits stage left." It's absolutely brilliant and leaves boxing forever. I don't know how many words there were there, but they're classic words, never to be forgotten.
Well, huge drama at the time. Let's go back just 2 years, less than that actually, when you spoke, Mike, to Mike Tyson. He said at the time that he agreed with Don King that the fight should have been over.
I remember I knocked him out first, and I thought I knocked him out. I guess the referee thought differently. And then I remember I lost the fight in the 10th round. I wasn't really that upset because I always knew I was going to be champion again. And all my heroes that lost their titles and won their titles back. So I wasn't, I didn't have no doubt that I was going to be champion again.
You write in the book about how you bedded 2 women the night before the fight. Did that sum up your attitude to boxing at that time?
No, it's just that I've done it before and I was successful against better fighters. So I thought I could do it with a lesser fighter and still be successful.
You said that you weren't too concerned about losing the title because great forebears had lost and won the title back, people like Muhammad Ali and many others.
Exactly.
But was there a relief as well that a lot of the attention would suddenly leave you?
Well, it never did. You know, it really never did. Me losing the title was more exceeding than him winning the title. So, you know, what I'm trying to say is that I was one of the fortunate guys that regardless if I lost, I was still a winner. I was still a winner in those circumstances. It was just a surprise that I lost. You know, that's how people looked at it, of course. You know, I don't think I'm better than people or anything. I'm just saying that's how it appeared with the sports world, you know.
Well, Mike Tyson did emulate Muhammad Ali. He did win the title back, Mike, but was he ever the same fighter?
I don't think he was, and it wasn't just because of what happened against Buster Douglas, although that was very important because the aura was dented. This aura of invincibility was dented. Many fighters around the world looked and said, if Buster Douglas can do it, I can do it. And he did fight a number of times again before he was then imprisoned for 3.5 years for a rape conviction. And then when he returned from prison in his 3rd fight back, he knocked out Britain's Frank Bruno to take the title again. So he did get back in terms of being world champion to the top of the mountain again, but he was never the same fearsome object that he was beforehand. And indeed, if you look at his record, he had 20 fights after Buster Douglas and he lost 5 of them.
It's a pity that he lost his way. We know we know now he had started to lose his way quite a long time before he got in the ring in Japan. But it doesn't mean he was a bum when he got in the ring. He had lost his way. It's a real shame that the man that had groomed him and found him. It's a real shame that guy didn't live a bit long. It's a real shame the guys that initially surrounded him didn't live a bit longer. Because I feel with him, that a bit like with Ali, we lost Ali's best 3 or 4 years when he was sent into exile and not allowed to box. That was, I doubt, the best Ali. Ali tells you that was the best Ali, and I think the best Tyson could have been around this time had he lived differently. So in a bizarre way, this should have been the best Tyson, the greatest Tyson. It wasn't, and in the end, as he said there, the loss is a bigger story than the victory. I think we were robbed of something before that night, and I think that was the full stop, because I was never even a fraction of the fight ever again.
And for all we were saying about the turmoil going on in the life of Buster Douglas in the build-up and the various tragedies, there was absolute mayhem in the life of Mike Tyson as well. The high-profile divorce, even higher profile than the marriage to the actress Robin Givens. And
have I got 20 seconds to tell the Enswell story, Mike?
Yes.
It's a classic story. I've got to tell you this story. Tyson, he didn't cut corners on money, so they fly out a cutsman, a special cutsman called Taylor Smith, a Detroit veteran. He goes out and he's in the corner and he's going to be in charge of cuts or any problems like swellings. And there's a small gadget that had been invented a few years earlier, a bit of metal, solid bit of metal, goes in ice, called an Enswell, and it goes against your face. Basically what it does, Ellie, instead of your eye closing from a bruise, it pushes the bruise out, so you wake up in the morning, you've got a tennis ball coming out the side of your head, but you can fight clean. Yeah, but you've got no obstructions, no bruises under your eyes. In the 5th round, he starts to get a swelling. It's closed by about the 7th round, Tyson. He's blind to everything that Buster Douglas throws from the right side. And in the corner, this corner man, Taylor Smith, hasn't got an Enswell. So one of his other cornermen, Aaron Snowell, needs to feel something with ice. He needs to feel something with ice. But because they've been having such a good time in Tokyo, the only thing he's got in his pocket is a condom. So he packs a condom with ice, crushed ice, and that's what he's applying to Mike Tyson's eye in a fight that's generating millions and going out live worldwide. He's applying in front of 40,000 people in Tokyo. He's applying a condom packed with ice to get rid of the bruise. Chaos in the corner. That sums it up.
you heard the phrase "fights won and lost in the corner."
that was it.
And let's put the postscript on James Buster Douglas's career, Mike, because it never got as good again, did it? He lost heavily to Evander Holyfield in his first and only defence, and he never reached those heights again.
No, he didn't. And when I spoke to him this week, he told me how he's now working at the Thompson Recreation Centre in his hometown of Columbus, Ohio. He's coaching underprivileged youngsters and adults who are on drug rehabilitation programs. And he told me that all these years on, yes, the money's gone, but he's finding contentment all the same, just in a different way.
I'm training youth in Columbus, young adults in amateur boxing, and I'm having a blast doing it. You know, it's full circle for me because this is where I started at, and I'm back at the beginning. So, you know, and this is pretty cool, you know, because it's just like rewinding the tape all over again and starting all over, man. And I'm having a blast with the kids, and I think they are too with me. So, you know, we're really doing well.
And is life good for you, James? Are you contented now?
Oh, yeah, I'm very happy and excited. And, you know, I have a family and, you know, 4 boys. I'm just enjoying life, and yes, I am, truly.
Well, that's great to hear, James.
Got my first Gold Glove champion this couple of weeks ago, too.
Oh, that must feel really sweet.
Yeah, that's great, man. It's like first of many to come, so having a great time doing it.
James Buster Douglas talking to Mike Costello, and great to hear a man at peace, which you often don't hear in the fight game.